Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. It is episode number 7. I am John Jagay, joined again by Amy Walls from Thimbleberry Financial. Good to be back with you, Amy.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to talking about this.
So today we're going to talk about the Secure Act, which has really been one of the dominant stories in the financial news in the beginning of 2020, because there's a lot that's changing because of this act just passed by Congress right at the end of 2019. So we'll start right at the basics. What is the Secure Act?
The Secure Act is all about retirement, and what Secure stands for is setting every community up for retirement enhancement.
All right.
Okay. So what it comprises is the biggest retirement changes that have happened since the Pension Protection Act of 2006. Mm-hmm. We talk today often about there not being anything in Congress that has strong bipartisan support.
Right.
This is something that had very strong bipartisan support throughout 2019 and was expected to pass earlier in the year. But in the end, the bill got attached to the year-end appropriations bill and was passed by the Senate on December 19th, and then President Trump signed it on December 20th.
Okay.
The issue is that many of its provisions took effect starting January 1, 2020.
So that's pretty quick. Not very typical that these go into effect just 2 weeks after it gets passed, right?
Exactly. So there are definitely some things that people have to pay attention to and pay attention to quickly, given how fast it went into play. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's, I think, really important to know is it has some really good provisions, but for every give you, there's a gotcha. And, you know, the way this was set up, it's not really any different.
You've said that in previous episodes, Amy. I like that. For every give you, there's a gotcha. So let's start with the give you. What are some of the benefits of the Secure Act?
Yeah, there's a lot more than we're going to be able to talk about today, but I think some of the big ones are that it should be easier for small businesses to set up retirement plans for their employees.
Which, as a small business owner, I love.
I do too. Those plans are likely to be less expensive and easier to administer. Mm-hmm. There's also the possibility that different employers may be able to come together to create one plan from an administration perspective. That's
something we've seen previously with health insurance. They've got kind of a collective and people pooling their resources together.
Absolutely. Same idea here. One other thing is that many part-time workers are actually going to be able to participate in employer-sponsored retirement plans now.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And this is really good news because in 2018, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics published data that showed that only 55% of adults participate in a workplace retirement plan.
That number is surprisingly low. I would have thought it'd be higher than that.
Yep. Well, hopefully it goes up now that those part-time workers may have plans available to them that they didn't have before.
Got it.
One other provision is that 529 plans, which are college savings plans, but they get grouped in with retirement plans because of the tax-deferred nature of them, those will be able to be used to make qualified student loan repayments up to $10,000 annually.
So previously, if you'd set that up for your kid or your grandkid, it could only be used for tuition and related college expenses while they're in school. But now they can be used to repay those student loan debts, which are just weighing on generations of adults as they proceed into life. It's nice to sort of maybe not have that anchor weighing you down as much.
Absolutely. It should really change some people's lives to have that option. Another thing is that, you know, having kids is expensive. Mm-hmm. Adopting kids, even potentially more expensive. And one of the provisions of the Secure Act is that it will allow for penalty-free withdrawals of up to $5,000 from a 401k for the adoption or birth of a child.
That is huge. Wow. Okay.
Yep. And then I think these last two maybe have the biggest impact, and that is that the age of required minimum distributions, or RMDs as they're often called, is being pushed back from 70 and a half to 72. That's age 70 and a half and age 72.
I think that's big because so many people are working later and they're healthier, and some people at 70 and a half, they want to keep working, so why not push that mandatory RMD back?
Yeah, life expectancies are increasing, and as you said, people are working longer, so that's important. We'll talk later, I think, about some of the tax impacts and just planning scenarios that change creates.
Sure.
And then along the same lines, the Act eliminates the age cap on traditional IRA contributions.
Okay, so you mentioned that those last two, Amy, the RMD age going up and the age cap on IRA contributions would probably be the biggest two. Can we sort of dive deeper into those two aspects of the Secure Act?
Absolutely. Contributions to traditional IRAs, I think, is the first one I'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to January 1, 2020, to contribute to a traditional IRA, you had to meet earned income requirements and limits, but you also had to be under the age of 70 and a half.
Okay.
So the moment someone hit 70 and a half, they couldn't contribute any longer, at least to a traditional IRA. If they were still working, they could contribute to their work retirement plan.
Okay.
But now there's no age limit. So an 80 or 90-year-old with earned income, I know we don't see it a lot, but it happens, can now contribute to that traditional IRA as long as they meet the income limits. So we have clients who, for fun, work part-time in retirement.
Yeah.
Or have started a business. We have a client who retired who has become an artist and is doing great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so those people can now contribute to a traditional IRA.
One thing that is important to mention here, too, is that you have to have W-2 income. You have to be making money in order to contribute to the IRA.
You have to have earned income.
Earned income. Got it. Okay.
Yep. So one thing to note is we're talking about traditional IRAs here, not Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs have never had an age limit on them for contributions. They just had the earned income requirement also.
Okay, got it. So as you said, for every give you, there's a gotcha. So what's the gotcha here with the IRA contribution changes?
There has been a provision that allows people to make a qualified charitable distribution at age 70 and a half. So it's a mouthful, absolutely. But basically what that's saying is that once you've reached that required minimum distribution age of 70 and a half, you can donate your required minimum distribution to charity.
Okay.
And in fact, can donate up to $100,000 annually to charity.
I hope when I'm 70 and a half that I have the means to be able to donate $100,000 to my favorite charity.
True enough, but you don't have to donate $100,000. It can be less than that.
Okay.
But when you do that and you take advantage of this, you give the money directly from your IRA to the charity. So it has met the requirements to have taken your required minimum distribution, but it never hits your income statement. So it's actually a bigger contribution, if you will, or a bigger benefit to you because the income was never received by you than having the income be received and then taking a deduction for the charitable contribution.
Got it.
So this provision is actually staying, and the age is remaining 70 and a half to be able to do that. So that part is not the gotcha. That's another, give you. So the gotcha is that if you are contributing to traditional IRAs because you're over the age of 70 and a half, since that's what we're talking about, and you are trying to make qualified charitable distributions, up to that $100,000 cap each year, the contributions to the traditional IRA actually impact negatively how much you can give to charity.
Got it.
So clearly this doesn't apply to everybody, but it could definitely make some surprises for folks that have been making those qualified charitable distributions and that are now also excited about being able to contribute to a traditional IRA.
In a sense, they're not letting you double dip.
Exactly. The other gotcha is about the RMD age being pushed back to 72 from 70 and a half. So before, when you were taking distributions, age 70 and a half was the age you needed to start taking withdrawals, but you had until April 1st of the year following the year you turned 70 and a half to start those distributions.
Right.
Those people who were 70 and a half in 2019, so 70 and a half on December 31st, 2019 or earlier,
right,
must continue to take required minimum distributions as if the rules never changed. But for the folks who turned 70 and a half on January 2020 or later, those are the ones that get to wait until 72 to start their withdrawals. So there's some people that were 70 and a half already that might get excited by this and not look at the fine print
and
say, ooh, I get to stop for a couple of years.
Nope, it's that clear line of demarcation. When you turn 70 and a half, if it's before December 31st, 2019 or after January 1st, 2020, that is unfortunately, it's out of your control, but it has to do with the day you were born.
Absolutely.
Okay, what other kind of gotchas are we talking about in the Secure Act, Amy?
There's a big one, and it has to do with inheriting retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And why I say this is a big one is it's expected to generate over $10 billion in tax revenue in the next 10 years.
Whoa.
We also have a very big wealth transfer happening, which is where that tax revenue is going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
So we already talked about RMDs, the required minimum distributions happening while someone is alive. Mm-hmm. But there can also be required minimum distributions for someone who inherits a retirement account.
Right, okay.
And the strategy there has been called a stretch IRA. And what it really means is that if, Jag, let's pretend you inherited $500,000 from your grandmother in an IRA.
Okay.
Okay. And she inherited that money from your grandfather when he died because he had actually saved it in his name. Well, as a spouse, she was actually able to pull his IRA money into her IRA.
Okay.
Okay. That's the only time you can do that. And if you inherited that money because she died in 2019 or earlier, you would have been able to take a small amount out each year, basically for the rest of your life.
And just sort of stretch it out so that I don't get too much of a tax burden by taking too much at once, is how it had been up through 2019.
Yes. And that was really great for people who are disciplined. Right?
Not me, but for those, yeah.
It really created a scenario where parents and grandparents could set future generations up to have their retirement taken care of.
Right.
So, and this is even better with Roth money because it grows tax deferred and is distributed federally tax free.
Right.
So the gotcha here, though, is the scenario changed. If grandma died January 1, 2020 or later, that traditional IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, doesn't matter, must be fully paid out to you within 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of folks are maybe in their prime earning years when they're inheriting those accounts.
Right.
And so now they're taking bigger distributions. In a Roth, there's no tax bill.
Right.
But in a traditional account, there's going to be taxes incurred as a result of those distributions. So it creates some planning opportunities for the folks who are planning to pass that money on to the younger generation to think about, does it make sense for them to pull some of that money out and pay the taxes versus setting up maybe their children to pay a much bigger tax bill later on.
So in your example, you talked about an inheritance of $500,000. Now that can't be stretched out for longer, if she passed 1/1/20 or later, then you're talking about having to take that $500,000 over 10 years. You're talking about additional income of $50,000 a year. That is rather significant when it comes to taxes.
It is, plus growth.
Right. Oh yeah, that.
There are some exceptions, though, to this rule.
Mm-hmm.
The exceptions are called eligible designated beneficiaries.
Okay.
So one of those continues to be the surviving spouse of the deceased account owner. So the same example I used earlier with your grandma inheriting the money from your grandfather in an account, that can still happen. The second is a minor child of a deceased account owner. So I have 2 kids. If I pass this money on to my children, given that they are minors, they will not be required to take the money out over 10 years.
Okay.
The third is a beneficiary that's no more than 10 years younger than the deceased account owner.
Okay.
So someone basically their same generation, same age.
So a sibling, or if you're not married, your fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, something like that.
Yep. And the last one, and there's more to this definition, but somebody who's chronically ill may be able to not take the money as quickly.
And again, that'll depend on the individual situation, but it's good to know that there are provisions in place for that. So, Amy, it's a lot of information here, but what should people do to adjust to all of these changes?
Definitely, if you work for a small employer, pay attention to the opportunities that may arise to allow you to save into a retirement account. If you're nearing 70 and a half, talk with your advisor because these changes may impact your retirement income strategy, your saving strategy, your gifting strategy, and even your estate plan.
Right.
You also want to talk with your estate planning attorney if that's you, and maybe get your estate planning attorney and your advisor on the same page. Get them having conversations with you about what this means.
And that is such an important point because I think a lot of times people tend to silo those things and they don't work together. And if you're working with a tax person, an attorney, a financial advisor, they really should all be in communication with each other because essentially you are all on the same team.
Absolutely. And if one of them doesn't want to be on the team, it might be time to look for somebody new.
Exactly.
Another thing, if you're nearing that 70 and a half, if you're comfortable, talk with your heirs.
Yeah.
Find out about their situation. We all have things that maybe we don't openly talk about, but you can improve maybe your situation, maybe their situation, if you talk about it.
Money can be such a taboo subject, especially in families, and even cause so many fights and arguments. But if you're open and honest with each other about your financial situation, you can maximize certainly the benefit for those you love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And even with those heirs, it doesn't hurt to have them involved in those conversations with your attorney and your advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is if they're prepared for what's about to happen, then they might be able to make better choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I've talked about this in a prior podcast, but folks who win the lottery tend to be worse off a few years later.
Yeah.
And an inheritance can be a similar type of scenario where you think it's going to do well, but if they're caught off guard by it, it may not have benefited them. It may have hurt them.
You really didn't need that Ferrari when you come back and think about it.
Yep, exactly. And for those that are listening and your parents are close to 70 or approaching that or even older, make sure they know about these changes.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir because my dad will be 69 this month and my mom will be 66 in March. So we're getting close to that with them as well. So I'm taking a mental note to have a conversation with them.
Well, maybe when we're done here, you need to go give them a call.
I think so.
Yeah. And with them, if they're not getting professional guidance, maybe help them talk to somebody.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, Amy, there are so many changes, and I've really learned so much in just 20 minutes here talking to you about the Secure Act and all these changes that are now taking place for 2020. You really do need to talk to somebody who understands this stuff and can help you plan for the present and for the future and for those who are going to come after you. So if you want to get in touch with Amy, what are the best ways to reach you?
You can find us at thimbleberryfinancial.com or give us a call at 503-610-6510.
A lot of great information, Amy. Thanks so much for the time. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer. Member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisor representative. Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice. Thimbleberry Financial is located at 650 Northeast Holiday Street, Suite 1600, Portland, Oregon, 97232.